Here to get us back on the moisture. It is May 21st, 2025. This is the Transportation Advisory Board of the Met Council meeting being convened. And so call the meeting to order and looking for an approval on the agenda.
So moved, Anderson.
Second.
All right. Second, Jean. And we've got a motion and a second on the agenda. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the agenda as published, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, that was really a tepid sort of level of enthusiasm. That was a rainy day level of enthusiasm. All those opposed? The agenda is approved. And do we have anybody from the public that wishes to address the tab on a matter of concern to them that's not on the agenda or scheduled for a future public hearing of any kind? Don't have those very often, but okay. Seeing no one coming forward, we'll move on to the next portion of the business, and that's the reports. We didn't have an exec committee meeting this month, and or this period this month, and so nothing to report there. And I usually would handle those in due course anyway. And I don't have really any kind of a federal update for anyone. I don't know. Connie may cover something in his update, but. They've got that reconciliation going on, and we're starting to think about reauthorization in September 2026, and then looking at I'd say one little red flag for me was I thought that we wouldn't have to deal with this federal ban on diversity, equity, and inclusion programmatic things relative to the highway trust funds that are coming down to the region. But now I see that there's something there too. And of course, we all think that that's an important part of the work that we do, is making sure that we're inclusive, and we're showing the appropriate level of inclusiveness and equity. And so I don't know, Connie, you may be seeing something on that and be thinking about it already, about how to deal with that issue. So we're just going to keep our eyes open on that one from a federal standpoint. I thought those formula funds would just come down to the regions and we'd do with them what we wanted to do with them, but they seemed intent on looking at things more carefully beyond the grants, and we know that they're looking at those carefully. So, Connie, I'm going to turn to you next and get a MnDOT update.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I'll talk about that first. First and foremost, I'd like to remind ourselves about safety, maybe share a few numbers there. In our metro district, up until end of this last month, end of April, we had 40 fatalities, and it varied anywhere from 0 in Carver County. Well done. It was, that's awesome to see. And Hennepin County, obviously the biggest county, had 14. And I won't go through all the numbers, but I can share these numbers with folks. It totals to about 42. The one thing of note in the metro area, of those 42, 10 were pedestrian. So 1/4 are pedestrian compared to when you go outstate, it's more vehicles, obviously, where it makes sense. And we've had 4 motorcycle fatalities in the metro area and 1 bicycle. And these numbers are good to look at as far as being able to focus on certain areas where you want to invest and be more proactive in future investments, programming projects, and doing more innovative ways through enforcement and all kinds of different ways to try to reduce fatalities. We're at MnDOT, especially our District 3, which is Brainerd, they've started to look at it more proactively, look at areas of risk where you would have, based on data and information, through AI and all kinds of different systems where you can try and predict where things will happen, certain dynamics, let's say by a bar, or different, and then working closely with DPS. They're working with us there, and we're trying to, maybe we'll have a presentation here sometime about being more proactive and looking into the future and use predictive models to make investments and make decisions and try to prevent things from happening. So I look forward to that because I honestly personally get tired of saying that, okay, we've reduced it from 650 fatalities in the state of Minnesota back in early 2000 down to 400 by being very proactive and including all the local statewide. But we've plateaued at 400. And it's been 20 years just staying around that number. So what is the next thing? And when I'm asked the question, I have to mumble because I don't know. But things like this, by using technology that we have and utilizing that, using predictive models, I'm hoping to that it will put a big dent into those numbers. So up until yesterday, statewide, we had 415 fatalities, which compares to 138 last year, which is a good trend going down, and I'm hoping it continues on. I can't tell you why that may be, but could be weather-related or other things. But extrapolating beyond the data, last year we had, for the whole year, 478 fatalities. We're projected to do less than 400 this year, 390-some. So hopefully that will continue as a good trend. So let's continue on the safety endeavor. Getting to the question, Mr. Chair, the thought I would characterize that uncertainty. We at the department, we're stuck in a very difficult situation, and we have projects that are linked to federal dollars, and we used to have federal requirements regarding diversity and environmental justice. Now it's only at the state level. We do get, and in order to be able to tap into the federal dollars, you obviously have to abide by it. I mentioned last time I've talked with several other states that are similar to us politically, both Washington State, Oregon, Michigan, Wisconsin, and they're all kind of in the same boat. We talk to their governors, and what do? We have values, we have principles that we go by in the state that's important to us. We've always done it in Minnesota. And however, when you send a document that goes to the federal level, you erase all of that. And when we do that, unfortunately, locally here, we got actually MnDOT, on one of our, I see Council Member Chambliss is here, on one of our projects, the people get nervous that we actually do that. You shouldn't. You should abide by your values and principles. However, it's a business decision as well. If you want to stay connected to the federal dollars, to the federal process, you're having to do a dual process and trying to maneuver that. And within our state, we have those. So we have a document that, and other states are doing that as well, where the ones I checked with, where they have a dual process. They have their own state values, as I said, and things that are important to them to take care of their communities. But then they have a document that I will call it a business document to go get the funds. And these funds that you're talking about, Mr. Chair, formula funds, these are our dollars that we've sent them. This is our Minnesota gas. When you go buy a gallon of gas, 18.4 cents of each gallon gets sent to federal government, and then they put it all in a big pot and send it back to the states, redistribute it. Some get more of it back. We're a donor. We get usually historically 93 to 94% back. But anyway, but you're right. Some of that stuff is under question, which I never thought it would be. So anyway, with this, for everyone to be patient with us, and we're trying to figure out how do we maneuver through this for our citizens, for those who we're building projects to the communities, that we're not changing our values and what we've done about health, about community access, safety for locals, safety for traveling public, better access, prosperity of communities. Those things are always have been important, and we're going to continue that. But we still, by taking a document and changing it and sending it, we still get beat up on, which is, I wish there was a little bit more trust, but that's the world we live in. So we're going through that, and it is a bit of uncertainty. Speaking of federal highway, our federal highway administration in Minnesota, they're pretty much cut down to half. And by end of May, they're all supposed to decide whether they're going to take the early retirements. Some of them have. Some of them will hold on and stay, hoping for maybe getting a different position, and they don't know. Yesterday, I was talking to Wendell Meyer, and he actually now has not just Minnesota. He's handling North Dakota and South Dakota as well. And some states don't even have a federal highway left. I mean, Alaska, they've been out without one for a while, and there's a few other ones, I can't remember which ones. So it's kind of, I don't know if it's shaping into being more of a regional thing, because federal highway is one that has an office in every state versus an FTA that Met Council deals with. They're more regional. In Chicago, or FRA, they're more regional, and I don't know if that's a grand plan for federal highway or not. But all that means to me is that there's less staff there, things could take longer, and I'm hoping, and I've told them how you want to deal with it. With the backup, you're going to get a lot of requests, and this basically means more delegation to the state, which I don't mind, and hopefully that is true. And at the state level, another uncertainty. I mean, I don't need to tell you what's going on. Everybody is aware of it, but surprisingly, there was no, there's no transportation bill as it relates to this committee. They've met a few times, the conference committee, the House and the Senate, and they have not agreed to one bill. There's a few differences. One of them is a subject that everyone's familiar with, is the greenhouse gas topic, and that's getting tangled up with a lot of other things, and so we'll see what happens. What I heard just this morning, that looks like maybe by 5 o'clock this afternoon, they're supposed to have an agreement, hopefully, and then having an agreement before you call a special session by the governor, and because he won't call one if there's not an agreement, as you know. And once they're in the session, then they'll decide how long they'll be there. So I'm hoping that will happen, and so we have a budget. As we talk about budget, us at MnDOT and other state agencies, I don't know if MPCA is here or not, but we all are looking at potential, and we've had shutdowns in the past, and I'm hopeful that doesn't happen. But as I mentioned this morning to my bosses, that I'm a little bit worried about a shutdown, that it could happen. I'm hopeful that it won't, but if it does, that I'm very worried about, because somebody will decide what's essential and what's not. Used to be a special master that did that back in 2011 or 12. And last time they did that, construction was not deemed essential. So every contract was stopped, state contracts. And that ended up costing the state, MnDOT mainly, for about $40 million, basically claims with contractors for many years. The time before that, in 2005, when we had shut down, construction remained essential. We continued construction work, and that was great. So locals will continue their construction work, but state can't, if that is. So for us to be proactive, both MnDOT, DNR, who builds stuff, Department of Administration, who builds things. So for them to be proactive in that, I don't know who's going to make the decision, because the special master doesn't exist anymore. So it'll be someone at the executive level, I would assume, or an MMB, which is our enterprise agency, that will make those decisions. So that is my goal as it relates to transportation, to make sure our construction projects will continue, because it's a commitment, a contract that needs to, but it's above my pay grade. They won't 100% listen to me. And then a quick report. Mr. Martinson gave me a homework last time to look at how construction on 94 and closing lanes, how it impacts things. We've started on that, and but we don't have anything, obviously, till the project ends, and then so we can do that, present it back to this group. But we are the Dunwoody bridges on 394 starting, and we had a good bid on the contract. That's like a $70 million contract, I believe. And that one will start in July. So the min-pass lanes, easy pass lanes on 394 will be closed. So we're fixing all the bridges there. So all the traffic will be on the general purpose lanes. So that'll go through winter, and then next year we'll do westbound and then eastbound. So the big impact will be next year. So that's one that we at MnDOT Metro, working with the city of Minneapolis and Google, you were talking about maybe innovative things. We're trying to utilize technology companies, because there's a lot of data out there that can help us, and to be more proactive with that project, because the downtown council, the BOMA, the building entities there are worried about how people are going to get in and out of downtown Minneapolis with that, because that's a big impact. But we have to fix the bridges. So that's all. I think I talked too much, Mr. Chair, but if there's any questions, I stand ready. Otherwise, we can go to the next agency.
Okay, yeah, next time we'll make you part of the program. Thanks for that report. I don't see Carl, Member Crimmins here. I don't see Bridget Reef in the audience, so I guess we won't have a report from the MAC coming up. And we have nobody here from MPCA. So I'll turn now to Reva Chambliss, who's here with us from the Met Council in lieu of Member Barber. Member Chambliss, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity to speak. The Metro Transit is happy to launch the second of 3 Metro BRT lines opening this year, with the launch of the Metro B line in just 23 days. The Metro B line is going to be traveling between Minneapolis and St. Paul along Lake Street, Marshall Avenue, and Selby Avenue. And Saturday, June 14th, our friends in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the regional area are going to be celebrating with a ribbon cutting from 10 to 11 at the Union Depot in St. Paul East Plaza. There are going to be community celebrations held at the Union Depot and in Minneapolis at the corner of Lake and Chicago. There's going to be food provided also by the Midtown Global Market. We will also have free rides provided on the B line, sponsored by Midtown Global Market. So it's going to be a great time, and you are all welcome to join us. Our staff are going to be present at stations along the corridor to assist customers and answer questions. We're grateful for the TAB for selecting this project for funding. It's providing a great asset to our community and to our project partners, MnDOT, Hennepin County, Ramsey County, Minneapolis, and St. Paul. We're very grateful. We look forward to celebrating the new line with our communities. We also have other changes that are going to be taking effect on June 14th, with additional weekend service and improvements to several routes under the approved Metro Transit Network Now services. So thank you to all of the contributions that have allowed us to improve our service around the region.
All right, thank you. Any questions from members? Yes, members again.
Madam Vice Chair, when is the opening?
June 14th, from 10 to 11.
10 to 11. Thank you.
And I think supplementally, I could report that I think the E-line, well, it won't be ready for operation until fall. I think you'll be off of France Avenue finally by, right before the Edina Art Fair, which is, we're really grateful for. So people will be able to get up and down France Avenue by bus or car or vehicle. So that's good. So make sure you make an effort to come over to the Edina Art Fair, starting the
That'll be a
first
great
weekend in June.
celebration.
Yeah, thank you. All right, and then let's go to Gary Hansen for Suburban Transit Authority update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maple Grove Transit reported growth in ridership, mainly Tuesdays through Thursdays. Understandably, ridership is less on Mondays and Fridays. The University of Minnesota ridership is strong and consistent, and their micro-transit ridership is growing, and in fact, much of Maple Grove's transit's capacity is maxed out due to demand for those rides. So they're having to deal with that. They and Plymouth Metrolink expect that the long-awaited final reports on their joint transit needs assessment study should be available by mid-July. Southwest Transit's 494 corridor service is fully operational, and their new autonomous vehicle service has booked about 1,600 rides since launching a little over a month ago. Minnesota Valley Transit Authority microtransit ridership is up 45% year to date, but continued expansion is challenged due to funding uncertainty. It's not too early to start thinking about the state fair. MBTA will offer expanded hours for its state fair service, beginning 2 hours earlier each day at 7 a.m. from Eagan and Shakopee. That's my report.
Thank you. Thank you, Member Hanson. Any questions for Member Hanson or comments? All right. Yes.
Thank you. Do you
Yes.
know, has
Commissioner.
any other, thank you, Mr. Chair. Has any of the other suburban transit providers talked about the state fair routes?
They will provide, yes, they will provide state fair service also. Yes.
Thank you.
Particularly Southwest Transit, not so sure about what Maple Grove and Plymouth might be doing though.
That's where I was,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you.
Having Member Chambliss with us and then looking at the temporary cards, it causes me to think we should do a little reintroduction. We've got two commissioners with us, Dakota County and Hennepin County, that and a former mayor. Bill, you want to reintroduce yourself to the group?
Yes, I'm Bill Drosty, Dakota County Commissioner. I'm alternate for Commissioner Holberg.
All right. Commissioner?
Commissioner Kevin Anderson, alternate for Commissioner Debbie Guttel.
All right, good. Thank you both for being here today. All right, and Joe McPherson, our TAC chair, anything to report out from TAC?
Yeah, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members. Nothing to note at this time. We have our 2 consent items coming up, and then Steve Peterson's going to share an update on where the working groups have been with the regional transport or the regional solicitation update. So I'll
All right.
save my comments till then.
Good, all right, yeah, stand by because we've only got the minutes and I'm going to bring you back up, and so you can stay right there if you feel comfortable. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Approval, Anderson? Second, Anderson.
All right, we got Anderson squared approving the the minutes for April 16, 2025. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the minutes of April 16, 2025, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. The minutes are adopted for April 16, 2025 tab meeting. And now back to Chair McPherson, and we're going to go through some consent items where there were some unanimous decisions at the TAC and then some non-consent activity as well. So go ahead, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we have 2 easy ones here for you. The first item here is 2025-14, streamlined tip amendment for Wright County's I-94, County Road 137, and CASA 37 reconstruction and roundabouts projects. So for those that are familiar with the Albertville Outlet Mall, if you travel west on 94, the first interchange you come to there is County Road 137. There was already a project in the STIP regarding the improvements of the ramp terminals. Right now, there's a signal on the east side, nothing on the west side other than the terminal stop for eastbound getting onto County Road 137. Wright County has since expanded that project because they're welcoming in Costco, which will be a great addition to that area. So because of that, adding onto this project, they're adding 3 more roundabouts as part of that project to enhance the corridor. So with that, all the additional costs on this are related to all local costs. This was not a regional solicitation project. This was a local partnership program with MnDOT, which is a statewide program for enhancements to the trunk highway system. A lot of times it involves local roads. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
Any questions relative to 14? Okay, let's talk about 15, the streamlined tip amendment for MVTA.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the second one here, with the MVTA, this is a tip amendment to actually add this project into the 2025, 2028 tip. It was already included in the 2024 to 2027 tip. The project is moving back a year, and so because of that, we need to add it to the new tip. This funding was regional solicitation funding, but it was moved over to the FTA, and with that funding now also needs to be included in the new tip as it moves forward to acknowledge that project. There's no scope change or cost change with this project, so a very simple streamlined tip amendment here.
Yeah, good explanation on that. Any questions on either of these items? Is there a motion to adopt the items on the consent agenda, 14 and 15, in a single motion?
So moved, Jenkins.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second on 2025, 14, and 15 as part of the consent agenda. All those in favor of adopting those items on a single motion basis, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Those items are adopted and approved. And then we've got one non-consent regular business item, and that is 2025-16, and Chair McPherson's going to handle this matter as well. Oh, is Joe going to handle this one?
I'll turn this over to Joe Barber.
Okay, all right. He probably would have liked to have you handle it.
I think I have to lower the mic because of. Thanks,
Yeah.
Chair. This is the time of year where we release the Transportation Improvement Program for public comment, and we're gonna have a bigger presentation on it when we look at it in August for the final tip. But in this case, I'll just briefly state that we have a tip that is pretty much looking how it usually looks. We have about $6.4 billion total, $1.8 billion in federal highway funds, $1.2 billion in federal transit, and the rest of it, 2.5, really 3.5, 3.3, 3.4, I guess, in state and local tax funding. About 46% for highways, 41% for transit, and then 8.5% for others and set-asides, and 3.7% for bike ped only projects. So what we're gonna have is a virtual public meeting on June 17th during the public comment period. The public comment period ends on July 7th, and then you'll see our responses to, I'll pinpoint it somewhere between 5 and 205 comments based on our recent history. And then we'll have this tip through this board on August, whatever the August meeting is, 20th, I think, followed by going through council, or Transportation Committee and Council. And then MnDOT puts it into its STIP, State Transportation Improvement Program. Any project that wants to get federal funding must be in the STIP, which does reflect our tip in our region, project for project, item for item, dollar for dollar. And finally, based on past history, November 1st would be the federal approval, and when this tip would then take over for the 2025 to 2028 tip. Given federal staffing, I don't know if that'll be delayed or not. We haven't heard anything. So with that, I'll stand for questions about the comment period or the tip itself.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Barbeau about the potential release of the 2026 through 2029 tip for public comment? Yes, Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Just a question on the comment period, knowing that it's spanning over the 4th of July weekend. Do you anticipate an impact, or do we have enough, have we accommodated for people not necessarily being engaged at that point?
Well, Chair and members, it's a 45-day period, so hopefully they'll find time around that. And
hopefully.
The schedule we work out with MnDOT is outrageously tight to make sure that we can get the comments in and presented to you. So that's kind of where it's always ended, somewhere between July 1st and I think it's the 7th this year, based on how the calendar falls and the fact that this meeting is on the 21st instead of like the 15th.
Yeah, thank you.
But we haven't had any complaints about that, and it is 45 days.
Other questions for Mr. Barbeau? Is there a motion to authorize the tab to release the draft 2026 through 2029 Transportation Improvement Program for public comment?
So moved, Jean.
Second, Morris.
All right. Got a motion and a second with regard to 2025-16, which is the release of the 2026 through 2029 tip for public comment. Any further conversation? Discussion? Okay. All those in favor of adoption of 2025-16, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. 2025-16 is adopted, and the 2026 through 2029 tip will be released for public comment and be back in front of us when that public comment period is completed. That takes us then from the business portion of the agenda into the information portion of the agenda. And the first matter we have there is Blue Line Extension and Gold Line Extension updates. So we've got Nick Thompson with us today. We don't see Nick very often. Nice to have him here. I guess one of his colleagues here as well. So welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, everyone. My name is Bradley Bobbitt. I'm a planner with MTS Planning. I specialize in our transit work. So I'll be presenting a bit on the background of the amendment, and Nick will be covering some background on the projects for this TPP amendment, which will be looking at Blue Line Extension and Gold Line Extension. There we go. So I'll just jump right into the amendment background since we don't have a lot of time. We have been giving presentations to other committees, so if you want to see more detailed information, either feel free to ask questions, or we presented to tech planning, so you can see the more detailed conversation there. As far as what's in this amendment, we're incorporating changes to the Blue Line Extension project from the municipal consent process. This will also involve removing the West Broadway Modern Streetcar project based on a request from the City of Minneapolis and Hennepin County based on the alignment for Blue Line Extension. And then we're also looking to add in Gold Line Extension between St. Paul and Minneapolis to the fiscally constrained plan. And then we would also show the current Gold Line, which opened in March, as existing in document plan, in the plan maps. We do have articulated at a pretty high level in the TPP our transit way advancement policy, which states criteria for considering projects for amendment or inclusion in the plan, which are presented here. So that basically includes what mode, where is the route going to be, the station locations, our selection process, so what criteria did we consider, how did we get to the decision we got to, the public engagement processes that we conducted, as well as the feedback we received, resolutions of support from relevant government bodies and agencies, so that includes cities, counties, MnDOT, depending on the project. And then fiscal constraint, basically meaning we've identified where the funding is coming from, and it's reasonable to expect that funding within the plan. So I will now turn it over to Nick to talk about the projects.
All right, thanks, Mr. Bobbitt.
Chair and members, Nick Thompson from Metro Transit. I'll just touch briefly on the two projects and the changes from the TPP. So Blue Line Extension is, the name connotes, it's an extension of the existing Blue Line. It'll go from Target Field Station north to Brooklyn Park, passing through Minneapolis, Robbinsdale, Crystal, and Brooklyn Park. This is an amendment to the alignment that's in the current TPP. We started a planning process to find a new alignment after the previous alignment was, we were not able to implement it. Once open, it will be a single seat ride, so you can go from Brooklyn Park all the way to Mall of America on the Blue Line. It's focused on not just building the transitway, but building the community, and this is our first project that we have that has specific anti-displacement priorities and strategies along with the construction of the project. We are currently in the design phase. We're at 60% design this summer, heading towards final design next year. Major construction could start as soon as 2027. Just some background on engagement. I'll skip this, but some information of how much engagement we've done and the selection process. I'll move through this too, but to get to the new route, on the left, you see the old alignment in light blue, but the different routes that were studied to get to the alignment that we have before you today. Last fall, we sought official municipal consent approval from each of the 4 cities and Hennepin County and did receive that. We completed that local support phase of this alignment in October of 2024, and that shows our support for this amendment. Gold Line Extension. The Gold Line itself from Woodbury to downtown St. Paul opened on March 22nd. This is a project that takes the existing Route 94 for Metro Transit that serves downtown St. Paul to downtown Minneapolis and replaces it with the Gold Line extending, so you'll be able to have a single-seat ride from Woodbury through downtown St. Paul, downtown Minneapolis, and ending at the Farmers Market station of the new Green Line extension. We're anticipating a capital budget here of about $25 million, which is adding 2 new stations, one at 94 in Snelling, and then one near the US Bank in downtown Minneapolis. And then in downtown St. Paul and downtown Minneapolis, we'll be using the existing Gold Line stations, and downtown Minneapolis, the existing C and D line stations. So we're making use of a lot of existing infrastructure for this. Skip the engagement. We are in the process of receiving our local support. Before this is released to the public, we're anticipating we'll have local support from 3 counties and both cities, and a letter of support from MnDOT as we're using I-94 as part of this route. Washington County is not required to provide local support, but as a major funder of Gold Line, they have offered and will be passing their local support for this extension of Gold Line. Back to Bradley.
All right, so I'll provide some quick information, high-level information on the effects these amendments to the plan, if adopted, the effects this would have on the TPP if we adopt these amendments. So in terms of regional transit finance, looking at Blue Line extension first, we're looking at a net capital cost increase of $1.7 billion compared to the current TPP. That would be, the anticipating funding for that would come from an increase in the federal CIG program, New Starts, and then also an increase in Hennepin County participation as the local funding partner. Operation costs, we're expecting a net increase of about $329 million over the life of the TPP. That change is largely from increased frequency that we're assuming based on matching the metro system frequency of the current Blue Line. And then the route is slightly longer, so we have a slightly longer run time. Those costs we would expect to be paid partly through increased fares and then also through currently unallocated sales and use tax. For Gold Line extension, just covering similar information, there's no net expected increase in capital costs compared to the current 2050 TPP, as the capital costs would be covered out of existing Metro Transit sources. For operations costs, we're looking at a net increase, estimated increase of about $128 million compared to the current plan. This is due to increased frequency compared to the current Route 94. Again, that would be paid through anticipated increase in fares and then also unallocated sales and use tax. Other effects to the plan itself, we conducted an analysis of equity and environmental justice impacts, and then we also looked at how this would affect our regional performance outcomes. Basically, both of these services were in part already in our previous model run, so Blue Line extension is already in the 2050 TPP. This is just a slight modification of the route and the frequency, and then the Route 94, which Gold Line extension would be replacing, is also in that current model. And so we see some incremental benefits to our performance outcomes compared to our build scenario in the 2050 TPP. And that's kind of the high-level summary of what we're seeing from doing those analyses. There'll also be some ancillary effects to maps that are in the plan and our long-range capital projects list, which will now include the updated price for estimated cost for Blue Line extension and include Gold Line extension. As far as timeline, we're doing these information items right now. We'll also give an information item at Transportation Committee for the Met Council, and then we'll bring this back to you for consideration for release for public comment. The public comment period would be in mid-July through late August, and then the adoption process would be September through October. So that is the information we have, and we can take questions.
Yeah, member Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question about at least for the Gold Line extension. We are working towards the letter of support from the county, from Ramsey County. I'm curious if the additional stations are going to be similar to our current BRT, where it's at grade level, and they would be at a standard that's similar to the other stations along Gold Line.
That's a great question. There'll be the existing, chair and members, the existing stations in Minneapolis we're using the C and D line stations, which are more like the A line stations, ABRT stations. So slightly different than ABRT, but from a customer standpoint, very similar. They have security, heat, off-board fare payment, level boarding. The Snelling station, because MnDOT is conducting the Rethinking 94 study, and we were not sure there's some options where there might be reconstruction or construction of that interchange. Our station at that location will be a slightly more temporary and basis because we didn't want to build a permanent station and then have MnDOT come in with the construction project shortly after. However, we will have security, heat, off-board fare payment at Snelling. So it'll be similar to BRT stations.
I guess, if I may.
Go ahead, member.
Just have a question about like, what type of, what would it take for a more permanent investment than versus the temporary investment?
Chair, members, as soon as we have a long-term plan for what MnDOT will be doing, if anything, we would then have ability to put in our long-term goal would be a permanent BRT station, so we can make that upgrade, Metro Transit can, with our capital funding, once we know if there's going to be any design impacts from MnDOT's I-94 study. But in the long term, we will want a permanent station there.
Need to follow on, go ahead. Why
Yeah,
don't you
I just
pull your
wanted to-
microphone over a little bit, too.
Oh, yeah, I also just wanted to hear more too about this, that connection too, because I've just been tracking the Rethinking I-94 project for a long time now, and it just seems like it's going at a stall too. So I'd like to hear more if you have any additional thoughts or input on that.
Mr. Chair. Member Zhang, I think Rethinking 94 is going to be a while. I think I don't think it's responsible to wait for that, just like we're fixing the bridges that we need to do there. So I think it's a great decision to build something that's somewhat temporary and not to build something robust that could get affected. As you know, we have 3 options that's moving forward, and then we're going to finalize those by the end of the year. And I think maybe there'll be more information, but I think, as you may know, we don't have $1 to do anything on 94 as far as it relates to rethinking at this time. It's a huge project. It's going to need a lot of money all we have is maintenance dollars to fix bridges, pavements, things like that. So it'll be a while before, I know I'll be 6 feet underground before that happens.
I hope not, but
Mr. Chair, so
Go ahead, member.
if I may, with that information, then I would actually encourage a longer-term investment so that it is consistent and that user experience is going to be as similar as possible with the Gold Line investments. Yeah, and yeah.
Chair, member, we'll take that back. We haven't started the design process of that, so we can take that under consideration.
Okay. Thank you.
okay. Commissioner Jepson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So back on the Blue Line Extension public engagement slide, the engagement metrics from August 2020 to February 2025, I'm just trying to wrap my head around 929 events in 5 years. That is a significant amount of public engagement. I can't even, I mean, if I'm doing the math correct, that's like 4 engagement events a week for 5 years. So I'm trying to wrap my head around this massive project and the balance that you try to make by getting the public engaged in this huge amount of engagement versus other types of engagement that is very minimal or very limited or very concentrated in only a small pockets of the region where this, what kind of events were these? Sure. And truly, was it on average 4 events a week for 5 years?
Chair and members, yes, that is correct. We have a large engagement team, particularly in a project in the phase where you're picking the route and alignment. There's an intense public engagement and a lot of events, anywhere from a one-on-one with the homeowner to a lot of these events was during the COVID period where we had a lot of driveway meetings block by block along the entire corridor to get the public input on the different route options and to learn that. And Gold Line, original Gold Line project would have been very similar during the phase where we were trying to pick the route and you're impacting broad number of cities and communities and neighborhoods because your alignment is not known. And so there were anything from one-on-one and community meetings to business meetings. A lot of the events would have been maybe hosted by the cities as we're moving towards the period of seeking their official support. And so these Transway projects require a tremendous amount of engagement, and we are staffed up to do that. Along here with our county partner on this, the county led a lot of the, Hennepin County led a lot of the engagement steps too, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I think, and Member Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question about the Gold Line stop in downtown Minneapolis on Nicollet and 7th. So the city of Minneapolis right now is going through a process to possibly pedestrianize Nicollet Mall. That would impact where that stop is in terms of usefulness to riders. So would you be prepared to move that stop and do the upgrades needed on either 3rd, 4th, or Marquette and 2nd?
Chair, member, we've looked at that as part with Minneapolis on what the alternatives are.
Yeah.
Our current thinking is that if transit moves off of Nicollet Mall, we would retain the BRT stations at Nicollet Mall and then add new stations to connect with the north-south. We feel that it's important to have the stations connecting to the events on Nicollet Mall also, but definitely we would need another connecting.
Yeah, Member Foster, go ahead.
Do you know what the cost of adding those additional stops in, and would that cost be passed on to the city of Minneapolis or stay with Metro Transit?
Chair and member, we have not come to any agreement on the financial allocation between us and the city as the project is still under consideration and planning. So,
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Foster. All right, Commissioner Karwoski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Washington County is very excited about the Gold Line extension. We have done a resolution of support a week and a half ago. I wanted to support Commissioner Zhang's point of view when it's financially appropriate or the right timing to upgrade those stations in Minneapolis to the level of the Gold Line. We put in a lot of time in articulating the level boarding, if that was one of the issues. It's very successful, so that means someone with a wheelchair, someone with a cane, and just the general comfort can be really accessible. So I know it's a timing thing, but very supportive of that. Just a few other points. We feel we're off to a good ridership level, but extending it to Minneapolis will only help our ridership. It'll be another reason why, I can safely speak for the people on the east side of Ramsey County, east side of St. Paul, they're on another reason to ride it is to get to Minneapolis. I see nothing negative. Right now, we've had in Washington County alone about $800 million of investment within 1/8 of a mile each direction of the Gold Line, and there's potential for $2 billion of investment, private investment, tax-paying investment. I can see that increasing with the appeal of being able to take the Gold Line to Minneapolis and spend some money on Hennepin County.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner.
Appreciate it.
Member Lindeke.
I actually was going to say the same thing Commissioner Karwoski said. I'm excited about going from Woodbury. My friend Bob was an usher at Target Field for decades, and he loves the Gold Line, but now he's a Saints usher. So I was just thinking, connecting it to Minneapolis is a great cost-effective project, so I'm just really excited for it.
Thanks. Other members? Member Anderson.
Looking at the Blue Line, Nick, considering kind of the political and monetary climate that we're in right now, are there any lessons we can learn from the Southwest project, hopefully to bring this one in under budget and under time, and we could use a win?
Chair, members, yes. Lesson number one is don't build a tunnel, and we're achieving that on this. We are definitely, from a design perspective, we're learning our lessons from each of our rail projects. We're also going to pursue a different procurement path that we've been given authority from the legislature to not just be low bid. And we expect that that is going to be a key to driving some of the innovations and certainty around the schedule. Challenge a variety of methods there. But, this new alignment is also not along the freight railroad, which was though it has some impacts on like travel time and stuff. The original alignment was 8 miles of shared corridor with the freight railroad. That has been one of the big challenges also with Green Line extension that we no longer will have on this route. So that's an important change.
Member Foster.
This one's about the Blue Line. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you share a couple of the anti-displacement strategies that you're thinking of on slide 7?
So there's two parts to that, Chair and members. There is a anti-displacement community prosperity board that was created through the state legislature, and they have provided $10 million of state funding for that board to allocate. Okay. Those are the Metro Transit and Hennepin County is supporting the board, but is not a member on that. And so they are making some decisions this year about how to allocate that. They have some priorities around retaining housing for those that want to live in the community, some steps with that, and also a good focus on business impacts to try to help with businesses impacted by construction so they can stay. We know construction has major impact. They haven't allocated any yet, so that I think we'll know more about where the priorities are there coming this year. And then within our supplemental final environmental impact statement, we have a series of mitigation steps that would be anti-displacement. And as soon as that document is published, which could be as soon as this week, that is a recognition by FTA that those mitigation elements are eligible for the project. And again, we have some recommendations around business mitigation, land use, housing, other elements to try to retain those that want to stay within the corridor. And also to grow the corridor through development and affordable housing.
Thank you.
Others? Yes, Commissioner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just kind of weighing in and tying a few of these pieces together. Thank you so much for the presentation and update. Really thankful for the community engagement that went into this. As was pointed out, like with that level of engagement, you see real community buy-in. It's certainly not without its detractors, but balancing those really complex desires and interests in so many different communities has been a heavy lift, and I think a largely successful one. Kind of shown by the level of municipal consent, having consent from all municipalities that are impacted. I think we had 33 of the 38 elected officials supporting it. And I think it is a result of that continued engagement. We saw a lot of really important work being done on that. I would be remiss if I didn't thank county staff. I know the driveway conversations that happened in 2020, 2021 were a huge part of that. I know that the cost increases are real, and from a Hennepin County perspective, we've been evaluating the impact of that cost from our perspective, and we have real hope that because of the lessons learned and what we can demonstrate on the efficiency that we've gained from not building a tunnel, not sharing freight corridors, utilizing Hennepin right-of-way, which I think is going to be a huge factor in being able to streamline and make sure that construction stays on time, on budget. That, like last time, we were able to secure funding from the previous Trump administration, and I think showing the need and the engagement that we have with the community, we're really hopeful that we'll be able to find similar success with reasonable assumptions made about the change in the cost. Inflation is hitting everything, and we're trying to be really diligent about how to plan for responsibly so that we don't find ourselves in that situation moving forward. Because that's the last thing any of us want, is to be in a situation where we're coming back and not having the funding available. So, thank you.
Commissioner Karwoski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to piggyback off of some of Commissioner Anderson's comments about the community engagement. So I have kind of an interesting background. So my 9th year as a county commissioner, and I was the whole goal line is in my district. So, but also we had a second commissioner, and there's 2 Ramsey County commissioners. So it was a great partnership between counties, and I think we mimicked each other in the community engagement. Met Transit did a great job of getting out and speaking to all the different cultures and bringing awareness. But I figured I had, in those 9 years, 100 meetings a year. It was built only in the last 3 years. So the first 6 years, again, was about 100 meetings a year. My early years, many of those were community engagement. And then when we didn't do the community engagement, it was kind of working with pen and paper with Met Transit and our county staffs to deliver the product that the community wanted and to get the buy-in. In fact, my 2 years as Oakdale mayor, those were additional meetings, went on for 12 years. I had a few years where I wasn't the point person on city council. So I seen it from the city council perspective, mayor perspective, county commissioner perspective, and we had city buy-in, sign off all the way along the way. Granted, there's controversy. You didn't please everybody, but you sure won over a lot of people by being very transparent. In fact, my last meeting as as mayor of Oakdale, I approved it as the preferred route, and that was a big step. And then the next week, I was sworn in as county commissioner. I approved route as a county commissioner. But I can't stress enough what Commissioner Anderson said about community engagement. You can't do enough of it, but it's well worth doing as much as possible. Really dotting I's, crossing T's before you even apply for the federal funding. And we were able to get bridges, extra lanes, more dedicated guideway. We have about 75% dedicated guideway, just numerous details. And I just wanted to reinforce it's a good process. 12 years or whatever to do the goal line. It would be nice to maybe cut the process down to about 8 or 9, but those extra years really does pay off on the community engagement. And our product, because of it, was on time, on budget. In fact, we're close to 40 million on a $505 million project. We're close to 40 million under budget, and got to give a lot of credit to Met Transit and the contractor they picked, but also I think the cities and county partnerships.
Yeah. Thanks, Commissioner. Just one final thing on slide 16. This goes to what Member Anderson was talking about a little bit. We talk about the Blue Line extension and those capital costs. From having been involved with Southwest LRT, I'm not worried about Hennepin County. They always step up and stand up and are a great partner for everybody in the region. But I am worried about the federal government. And I know this is, as I recall, this is a reimbursement strategy. And so we're building, hoping that they reimburse us. I guess there's some preliminary, expectation of payment, or maybe there's a full signed contract that they're going to reimburse us for the work we do. How does all of that work, and what is your level of confidence that this New Starts money will indeed be available?
Sure, that's a great question, Chair. So we're seeking federal funds under the Capital Investment Grant Program, which is a federal national program where you're competing against other cities for that. All our transitways to date in our region, with the exception of some of the ABRTs, have been built through this program, and we have been really successful competitively. It's a unique process in that you don't know how much funding you're going to get until almost when you start construction, which is very, it's a risky endeavor that you're going through. I think at Gold Line, we received the grant 9 months after construction started. And so we know this is a very competitive project nationally because we expect it to be rated to get federal funding. And we slot in a good time when we're going to be seeking the federal funding next year. And so we hope to have a knowledge of how much federal funding we're going to receive sometime next year before we start construction. But there's always uncertainty in this program, no matter who's in charge of the administration. It's just, I think our track record has been good. It was very good during the previous Trump administration. And so we're hopeful, and we're pressing our case that this is the right project to invest in. So.
Good. Yeah, thank you for that information. Okay, well, thanks for being here with us today. I'm going to bring up Steve Peterson now to give us a regional solicitation update. Thanks, Mr. Thompson and Mr. Bobbitt.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair and members. This is a information item, a checkpoint. We are going to come back with a similar item at the August meeting of TAB and seek an action item and your approval on the overall structure and application categories. But today we want to check in with you, see if we're heading in the right direction, and see if you have any questions on where we're going. First, maybe before I begin, a quick thank you to Scott County, actually. We had 8 of our staff members go out and tour Scott County, past projects that we funded in Scott County through the regional solicitation last Friday. So you may remember Lisa Fries, the former TAC chair. She led the tour, and 2 other staff members, Craig Jensen and Adam Jessen, but saw a lot of great projects. One of which that was funded recently was under construction, the Merriam Junction Regional Trail that is going to connect over the Minnesota River to the city of Carver in Carver County. And actually went to Prior Lake as well and saw the downtown reconstruction. That was won a national award for that project off of Prior Lakes downtown. So again, thanks to Scott County staff for hosting us here on Friday.
Yeah, downtown Prior Lake looks just terrific.
Yes, and this is one of the projects right here, and that's what caught my attention. This is Highway 41 and 169. That's a project that the TAB funded now several years ago, but maybe opened in the last 2 or 3 years, and has been really a great project from both the safety and reliability perspective. So on to the regional solicitation evaluation. As we talked about last time, we've now asked over 100 technical experts from across the region, many of which are behind me here today, and we're starting technicals or special issue working groups. We have 7 of those, as you can see the list on the screen: safety, bike ped, transit, roadway, climate, TDM, and equity. These groups have met twice already and are working on the criteria and the measures, the minimum, maximum awards. We did have one in-person workshop here last month, and a second one is a week from Friday, May 30th, where we're digging even further into the details and trying to connect that 2050 TPP with how we distribute money in the regional solicitation. We have brought this overall structure to those 7 groups, as well as to TAC planning, funding and programming, transit and bike ped technical work groups, TAC, Transportation Committee of the Met Council, and now back to TAB. And some of maybe the key takeaways over all of those meetings: general support for this modal plus hybrid structure that we'll talk about more today. But we want to keep it open, and that's why we don't have an action item until August. We're making tweaks even with the technical working groups along the way here as they notice different changes and maybe combining application categories, in some cases splitting them up. Greater clarity on where projects should apply. Flexibility, giving some of the federal funding changes the chair talked about here to open the meeting. And we did add back a bridge, and we're calling it important bridge categories, and that's one thing that we heard both at the technical level and from policymakers, that having a place just for rehabbing and reconstructing bridges was important. So again, we started out this process looking at our existing structure. And when we looked at MPOs across the country, everybody did it a little bit different way. We had structured ours based on mode. So we had application categories by modes. There were two issues with that. One, we couldn't focus on safety in the way that you had asked us as TAB members to put money and more emphasis on safety. And some of these other funding categories like EV charging, travel demand management just didn't fit very well into a modal-based structure. And so after really the first year of the project, working with the policy work group, I've come up with work on the modal plus hybrid structure. So it does retain many of the modal aspects right in the middle under this TPP goal of dynamic and resilient, but does add dedicated application categories for safety, so both for proactive safety and reactive safety. And that's shown in red on the far side. And this is a way you can, as TAB members, can say how much, if you want to put 50 million, 100 million, all the money towards safety, that's a policy decision that you can make later on in this process. At the same right, we did pull out some of those new areas, travel demand management, TDM, and EV charging under a separate bucket, I'll call it, because it didn't fit very well into the current structure. And maybe the last thing to note, the active transportation work group, I know it's not on the calendar here today for Glenn to give his update, but that group did meet on April 28th. And one of the recommendations that group made, you can see it under the bicycle pedestrian column, we had asked the group, how would you like to separate the federal funds that we're putting into bicycle pedestrian and this new regional sales tax money? And we gave them three options that we discussed, and the recommendation from that group was to split it by category. So we've brought that back to our technical working group. And so that's why you can see the light blue and the dark blue. So the dark blue would be would be the federal funds that we are putting towards projects. We're calling it regional bike networks or bike facilities. And then the regional sales tax money would be the categories local bike networks, pedestrian, local pedestrian, and then a category for non-infrastructure or planning work for bicycle and pedestrian that they could apply for. And again, we're kind of working what exactly those details will be in those categories and eligibility, but that was some good clarity that we got from the active transportation work group at the end of April. So thanks to Glenn and his group there. So a few of the next steps, the policy work group, Chair Hovland does lead, and the next meeting of that group would be July 16th. And between now and then, we're going to work on a lot of the technical details and put together a pretty close to draft package, and any major ideas or conflicts that come up through the technical committee, we're going to bring back on July 16th to that policy work group and see if we can get some clarity on where people would like to head from the policy level. So again, this will be an action item coming back on August 20th. And that will be just the structure and the application categories. And then at the October meeting of TAB, we'll ask probably for a series of approvals, everything from the point distribution, which is really a policy issue, where you want to put the points, where you want to put some of the money, from ranges, the maximum awards, and at the end, the draft application in its entirety. You have a chance to vote on that.
Before you leave that slide, just to make sure that people understand, in number one, there are special issue working groups, workshop number 2 on May 30th. If folks look at slide 3, they'll see those special working groups. Is that correct?
Right.
So you've got 7 or 8, I think, of special working groups.
Yep, seven of those groups, and each of those groups has.
And that's all technical people.
Yeah, we even have Chair McPherson on 2 of them, believe it or not. Expertise, couldn't keep them to one, we had to put them on 2 groups.
All right.
So that leads us to the questions that we want to ask today. Do you have any questions or concerns about the proposed structure? And I'll bring that slide back up again. Do you have any direction or changes you'd like us to make at this time? And in general, are we heading in the right direction? Again, the goal of the project is to align Imagine 2050 and the 2050 TPP with how we distribute federal funding in the region through the regional solicitation. So here again is the.
Really pleased we're coming back to the full tab for periodic check-ins to make sure that the policy maker work group is heading in the right direction. So it's good to get these check-ins and get input. Thanks.
Yep, so thanks, and so I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chair, and see if there's lots of details we could go into, but again, we just wanted to see from a high level, do we think we're heading the right direction, or do we need to change course on one or more of the items that you see here, so.
Yeah, so this is that proposed hybrid structure, and we got on the screen now, and then you had those other questions. I guess, generally, do you think we're heading in the right direction here with this type of an approach? Member Zhang?
Yeah, I just have a question. I'm not sure about additional feedback on the model or the hybrid structure. I'm more curious about, what are we using to like measure some of our goals here.
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Chair and members. So that's an important question that you and others have asked, and how are we going to tie it back to our goals? The consultant team that we have for this project, we've got a whole task just designed to performance measures, and ultimately we're going to ask, what do we get from $250 million of federal funds coming to the region? And we've had several meetings to date on looking at job accessibility, looking at greenhouse gases, looking at VMT, looking at all these different factors, and hope to bring some of that information back maybe to the policy group probably in a few months' time as we iron that out. But thanks for the question.
Well, I think in part the goals drove us to this structure, and then there's a loop back I think we'll have to be thinking about as we go along too. Somebody else had their hand up too before Commissioner. Oh yeah, Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you,
and
Mr.
Commissioner
Chair.
Karwoski.
I think so. Kind of reviewing, talk with staff about this, and overall, I would say that we're very supportive of kind of this hybrid type approach, having the safety and environment, and then the modal goals largely. I think, from the safety perspective, we like the idea of 4 application categories to kind of recognize that balance between proactive, reactive solutions, and also trying to find that variety in size and cost and what it'll all take. I know we're undertaking a similar type project internally to evaluate safety and try to make sure that we're kind of balancing all of those different aspects. So I like that from a integration of how we're evaluating kind of regional projects. The bike ped, I think we would see benefits of isolating out kind of more network type projects for bike and ped versus making sure that we're doing other kinds of bike ped projects that are maybe isolated from or smaller in nature, at least in terms of evaluation, because they're going to obviously have different kind of size implications between them. From the roadway transit, I don't think we had any comments on that. We've been doing that kind of work, and I think that modal kind of approach makes sense. The roadway, fairly minor feedback on that would be renaming some of the reliability excessive delays category to be consistent with the other categories, just from a naming convention. I don't think it really affects the work being done. And then important bridge connections. Every bridge is an important connection. So I think we can just call it bridges.
Less important bridge.
Would
Thank
you forward those comments to the technical people? That'd be helpful for them, I think, as they go into this next phase. Commissioner Karwoski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, what Commissioner Anderson alluded to, I think is pretty consistent what I'm gonna deliver, so representing Washington County. I'll just elaborate a little more. We're also pretty supportive of this slide 12, this hybrid structure. We felt in this category of bicycle and pedestrian it's really important soon to, at a staff committee, I trust our staff committee level to vet out the split, the details of the split between the federal money and the state, maybe more detail there. And I think there's more of a urgent timeline to separate that out. The other thing is in the areas of, and yeah, I think the road model, what we've been doing on roads is there aren't any real issues that. But equity is, I know I think all those subgroups, 6 or so, are working on equity. I know there's a subgroup on equity, but it'd be very important to have a definition that everybody can interpret the same as we apply what equity is going to be. I'm in workforce and we have equity there. The definition might vary. So it's good to have a standard equity when we're talking at trails and what that means. I trust these committees, but to come up with that or recommend it, but I think it'll be very important.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. Anyone else at this point in time want to opine on the direction or give us your thoughts? Member Martinson just stepped out, and I was thinking this was an appropriate time I was going to have him report out on some activity that he and Chair Johnson have been involved in relative to our active transportation funding dollars. Those dollars are now looking like they're going to be less impactful than we thought, but still impactful. I think we've gone from an expectation of what, 20, 25 million down to less than 20 million that we'd expect annually.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the original estimate was 24 million a year, and last year the receipts were $21 million.
All right.
So you have 3 million less.
And so what's, you heard Connie Seabram tell us that not much has happened on transportation over at the legislature. One of the bills that's over there is an attempt to, actually on the House side and the Senate side, is an attempt to deal with suicides that have taken place on the Washington Avenue Bridge by the University of Minnesota. And in the House bill, if memory serves me right, the House bill provides that the cost of that protection on that bridge would be paid for by Hennepin County. On the Senate side, they say we should use the TAB funds from the active transportation monies to pay for the fencing that would be necessary to prevent suicides from occurring on the Washington Avenue Bridge. Good intentions. Commissioner, you had some update there?
We would support the TAB.
Yeah. But the cost of that fencing, and I'll let, here comes Mr. Martinson back, Member Martinson. I don't recall what the cost of that fencing is. We started talking a little bit about, this seemed like an opportune time to talk about this letter then that you and Chair Johnson crafted to send to the legislature about our thoughts on using active transportation dollars for the suicide fencing that would be necessary on the Washington Avenue Bridge. Laudable purpose, source of funds, to be determined, but our view of the world on that, I think you could well express.
My apologies for stepping out. I thought I was going to be speaking on this later in the meeting.
Yeah, no, I know. I just thought.
Yeah, so I apologize if I missed the preamble to what it is. So the Washington Avenue Bridge between the West Bank and East Bank and the University of Minnesota campuses is a frequent site of suicides, and this has been ongoing for decades. I witnessed a suicide on that bridge in the mid-'80s when I was an undergraduate there, in fact. And apparently it's about anywhere between 2 and 5 people a year. So it's a necessary need they currently have a temporary fence there that is not great. And so a permanent fence is being planned. There is a family that has experienced the loss
in recent years that has been kind of spearheading the effort to get the legislature to make a move on this. Legislature disagreed between the House and the Senate in terms of who was going to pay for it. So in the House, they recommended that Hennepin County pay for it out of their sales and use tax, and in the Senate, it was recommended that it be taken out of Met Council's sales and use tax. And both Glenn and I said, it really should come out of bonding. It should be bonding bill, and nobody wants to do that for obvious reasons. And so we, with permission from the chair, and chair signed on to the letter with us, and we spoke with Mr. Carlson and Ms. Benowitz about this to make sure that we were within our rights to do that. We did not have time to bring it to the whole tab, obviously, before we went, because this was something that happened either last week or the week before. So, but we did send the letter in asking that the legislature get more creative in their funding, in hopes that they did not come after the active transportation funding from the sales and use tax. And then Glenn went and actually did address the Transportation Committee in one of the few meetings that they had before the session ended. So that's the update.
And the cost of that fencing was around $9 million, I think?
Yeah, so the initial in the House was 15 million, and then that came down to 9. And the testimony from the University of Minnesota representative said they thought they could do it for 8. And in the Senate, the language included a provision that any amount that was not spent on such a fence by June of 27 would revert back to the original source, whatever that source might be. And then in one of the committee meetings, there was, I believe, Dibble actually did talk about a potential of maybe using multiple pots of money, not getting it all exclusively from one. But again, with where things are now, we wait to see what happens in the special session, and I don't know how high a priority the transportation omnibus bill will be for them to get it done. So,
so our share now is around, last year was 21 million. I think Hennepin County, you could probably affirm this, Commissioner Anderson, but I think your Hennepin County share of active transportation dollars is somewhere in the $15 to $16 million range.
I think that sounds about right.
All right. So,
we also clarified that we had encumbered 19 million last year from projects that came here and had already been scored, and that we felt there was a need to maintain a 10 to 15% reserve. So that would be another 2.3 to 3 some million that we would need to keep. And so currently the account only has about 6 million in it. So there's not enough in the current accumulation to even pay for that fencing. So.
This is just illustrative, I think, of even city experience over at the legislature and county experience. As they struggle with budgetary challenges that they have, they're trying to be creative too. And so at least they're interacting with us on it and understanding that we have our own level of commitment. So, Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I know that we had included seeking funding. Our primary goal, I think, was through bonding dollars for that. I also just heard that right now there's consideration for the higher education assist preservation and replacement funding to the U of M to help cover some of the costs of that. So negotiations ongoing, but I think there's a general consensus that action needs to be taken on it, which is a really good place to be starting from, and then finding out where you find those pots of money is obviously devil's in the details, but.
So I know, having been over there to testify on some local option sales tax, which some of the counties may have too, where the local governments are paying sales tax to the state of Minnesota. So to be thinking about one unit of government charging another unit of government sales tax seems philosophically pretty odd. But nonetheless, when you go over there and testify about removing sales tax on purchases of equipment, materials, and supplies, they say, well, we need the money. You know, and so the practical gets rubbing up against the philosophical, just like it does on the federal level when you've got federal money coming down. And we've had this discussion in our policymaker work group about Well, like, I'll give an example. The city of Edina, we talk about the federal abandonment of programming around DEI. Well, we've got $500,000 in federal funding at stake, but our neighboring city, Bloomington, has $20 million. They may take a far different attitude on trying to navigate around that DEI issue than us, for example, who could take it on head on, and say we don't need your money, but we're gonna just stay true to our principles and our beliefs and our values, as Connie talked about. But for cities around the country, like if you live in Cleveland and they're getting $50 to $100 million a year to help the poorest amongst them survive, or even Bloomington, the mayor of Bloomington suggested that without those federal monies, they'd have 600 families on the street because of the way they use those funds. So it's a tricky time we're in to figure out how to navigate some of these things. And some of us can be more bold about it, and some of us have to be a little bit more circumscribed and clever about how they deal with it. Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say thank you to Member Martinson and Member Johnson and Chair Hovland for bringing this to the attention of the legislature, because reaching out to co-chairs and the chairs on both the House and the Senate side in support of your letter, even though we all agree that it's a very necessary cause and worthy cause to fund, and a very, very, very sad and unfortunate request. Going to pots of money that already exist. I mean, we're having a difficult enough time figuring out how to spend this money in the process and the application and ranking. And then if we just have the legislature come and say, hey, we want this much money, that sets up a really, really poor precedent. And that's what I think, in my opinion, I wanted to point out and meet head on, so that if we have this one project, I mean, what happens when another worthy, sensitive, sad project comes up and they need the funds? So we're dealing with that at the county now. I mean, just taking away dollars that were supposed to be given to us at huge, very high dollar amount levels, and there's not really much we can do about it. This we can do something about, so hopefully they'll listen to us. So thank you for taking the time to do that.
You make a great point. I'd rather make that decision here that we'd like to contribute to that fencing, as opposed to being told you're going to pay for the whole thing, and then we have to readjust.
Yeah, that's great.
Because we may decide to make that decision and make an allocation for it, just like the county. So to be able to come to us and talk to us about it beforehand would be of great value, I think, and try to figure out how to create something positive instead of sort of top-down mandate from the legislature. Member Sehebjam.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't want to take this conversation to a dark place, but I think I might have to. I've had a lot of encounters with families who've lost members, whether it's through fatalities on our roads, young people passing and having to react to do things for the family. And this obviously it's a reactive solution. We're reacting to something. It's a noble cause. It's awesome. It's being funded. However, there are a lot of high bridges all over the place, and that needs to be, maybe talked about. There'll be probably more, but I want to bring this to people's attention as far as. Just so you know, the associate general contractors and the unions, and they've met together with the state, mainly MnDOT, Metro Council, and a Department of Administration who build things. And the subject of suicide, and we were whispering here with Commissioner Karwoski about mental health and things like that. And it's a tremendous amount. There's a tremendous amount of suicide in the construction industry for various reasons, and we don't hear about it. The unions the 49ers, the carpenters, those folks, I've been in these meetings with them, and they said monthly they have to go to funerals of their own people, the workers, the guys, folks, ladies who work on projects that for various reasons choose to take that route. and do that. And there's a lot of work being done, working again with the three-legged stool, the unions, the contractors, and the owners of the system being us. And so I just wanted to maybe, that's more of a proactive solution where you, and mental health in general, where somebody decides to go do that and get on a bridge and jump off. So I don't know why I had to say that and bring that up, but I think it's important. Again, I truly believe this is a great cause. However, it's reactive. It's not going to solve the problem long-term, so.
Yeah, thanks for that. Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to say thank you very much for bringing that up. That has been a part of the conversation that we've had locally, that I've had with constituents and with interested members, that fencing, while an important aspect of reaction to help save a life, the true work that needs to be done is upstream. And I would also be remiss if I didn't say that current actions at the legislature in terms of where they're prioritizing health and human services is making that more difficult, particularly for counties who are predominantly responsible for reacting to and trying to find proactive solutions to people struggling with mental health. It is going to be more difficult for us to meet those needs. And so if there is an opportunity for anybody in whatever capacity we have to say that proactive solutions to meeting mental health needs in our society and stressing the importance of a statewide investment to work on that, I think we should be taking that every chance we get. So I thank you for bringing that up and pointing out that the problem that we're trying to address in this is deeper than a fence. And the state has a role to play in helping us get there.
Yep. Thanks for that, Commissioner. Member Martinson.
Thank you, Chair. Not to take anything away from that perspective, because it's absolutely true. But when I worked in the VA for 10 years, and every year we got training on how to prevent suicides among veterans, which is obviously a very common problem. And the training that they gave us was among the best of all the trainings, which were many in the VA as a federal agency. You might imagine several 30 or 40 a year that we had to do. But one of the things that we learned in that training was that suicide is an impulsive act, and if you can interrupt that impulse, you can save a life, because then that person doesn't just go to the next bridge. So I don't want to see that fencing characterized as just a reactive move. I think it is proactive, because you're hardening the target of the bridge. And let's be honest, universities are places that are full of people with mental health challenges. Students under enormous stress, graduate students, postdocs, immigrants who may be struggling with their visas. And in the current setting, that is an extraordinary amount of stress that people are under. And that bridge gets thousands and thousands of crossings. I can't tell you personally how many thousands of times I've gone across that bridge in my career in connection with the university in various capacities. So the university is uniquely, there's needs there that I think are higher than any other bridge in the cities. And so I think fencing on that bridge is very appropriate. So, but again, that doesn't take anything away from saying, yes, we should be doing more upstream work as well to address mental health challenges. So that's all.
Yeah, thank you, Member Martinson, for that perspective. All right, well, that was quite a conversation. We've got one more informational process in front of us, this presentation today, and that is Heidi Schauberg is going to talk to us about the Regional Safety Action Plan, which is an important thing for us also to be talking about, working towards Vision Zero. We're at 2:06 in case somebody doesn't have a watch. I think we're in good shape here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Heidi Schauberg, Transportation Planner in MTS. And I think we were last here on this plan toward the end of last year with the consultant team when the plan was still in progress. So just kind of coming back to cover as kind of a refresher, especially as we're in the regional solicitation evaluation to talk about what was included in this work. So just as a reminder, this is a project that focused on fatalities and serious injuries and how we can reduce those from vehicle crashes and bicycle vehicle crashes using a safe system approach, which you've had presentations on from MnDOT recently. We worked with a consultant team and a local technical advisory group on this. So there are different applications for this work that I'll talk about in a little bit. But one of the things we did want to try to do with this plan was to meet the requirements for the Federal Safe Streets and Roads for All program. This is a discretionary federal program that still has 2 years of funding remaining. We've had many local partners receive funds from this program so far. And to apply for these funds, you either are creating a safety action plan or using an existing plan to qualify for some of the additional funding opportunities. So we wanted to make sure this plan was addressing those requirements to help provide support to any local partners that might want to pursue additional funds using this plan if they don't currently have one. So there are two primary types of funding in this program. The first is planning and demonstration. This is where we've seen most local applicants have success recently with receiving funding to do local safety action plans. But this can include other work. So for example, if a community wanted to use the regional plan to apply, there could be supplemental planning that would be done, such as engineering studies, road safety audits, plans that have maybe more specialized focus, such as speed management. And then it can also be used to fund demonstration projects or pilot projects to kind of test out different concepts for treatments. The implementation funding, just from previous rounds, that's been a little bit tougher, I think, for communities to get, and that's for those more permanent improvements and infrastructure, and can also include behavioral or other operational strategies with that. I did want to mention there is currently a funding opportunity open for 2025 with a June 26 application deadline. So on the study page that I'll have a link to at the end, we do have information on the study webpage about how this plan meets those requirements, and we'd be happy to talk with any local communities that wanted to try to use this plan to apply for those funds. So we just had kind of key elements in this project. We did do some engagement I'll touch on briefly, just kind of state of the practice review, and then different types of crash data analysis. So overall, some trend summaries that are posted on the website, high injury streets identification, that'll talk a little bit more about a more systemic crash risk index analysis, crash rate analysis, and then we use that analysis to kind of identify where we have the top corridors in the region and in each county based on that work. And then higher level countermeasures and programmatic recommendations. So some of the other applications for this work, in addition to supporting communities and seeking that federal funding, of course, one application that you're hearing a lot about is the regional solicitation evaluation. And as we're going through that process, this can help inform that discussion, especially as it relates to safety. But it can also, we're looking to see how we can provide support for other local planning policies and investments. So it may help point to areas where additional work might be needed, or inform scoping for other projects that might be primarily done for other reasons, but may highlight areas that have safety concerns. And then, of course, we have a responsibility as the MPO to continually monitor our region's performance on reducing fatalities and serious injuries, which you hear on an annual basis right now when we come to you to set the targets for the annual level. And so this is one tool that we might be able to use to help us kind of review how the region is doing in meeting those goals. So the engagement work for this part was kind of twofold. So we did have a suggestion from a local partner to try to pull from what we've already heard, what local partners have already heard through the work that you all are doing in your communities. So we did try to gather some of that. It was kind of to varying levels of detail. And then that also helped us kind of point to additional communities that we wanted to try to focus on for engagement for this project, where groups of people that are not as typically represented well in some of these conversations. And so to do this, we held 7 events specifically for this project. It was a combination of focus groups and then also participation in a tabling event that was a larger event. And we used images of existing infrastructure in the region, like shown on the slide, to really kind of prompt those discussions about what people wanted to see in their communities. I don't think any of the findings were particularly surprising. Overall, of course, a lot of what we've heard about was people feel safer when they have connected systems, regardless of the mode, and when they're separated, especially for people biking and walking. Clear signage and navigation is important for any mode, and slower streets are preferred basically where there are people, like whether people live or where they're trying to connect to community destinations, as well as some additional things that kind of were themes about roundabouts can be great for actually slowing down drivers, but there needs to be some additional attention for pedestrians because they can be difficult for people to navigate on foot, and then better lighting overall. So one of the key aspects of this analysis was doing a regional high injury streets identification. So this is becoming a more common type of analysis. This plan overall is using crash data from 2018 to 2022, which was the most current data we had when we started this. And so what this is doing is basically looking at where crashes have happened, but not just where each one has, but trying to identify where are there concentrations of where these crashes are happening repeatedly over a 5-year period, not just each individual fatality or serious injury. So we did this analysis by each mode. So we did include pedestrians in this one. So we did have a separate pedestrian safety project that we did before this that did some kind of precursor work to this. So we brought that in, so we did have this level of information for all modes that was consistent. And then bicyclists, motorcyclists, and motor vehicles, and then you can combine those 4 up into one overall identification as well. So it's really focused on those fatal and serious injury crashes. We did include minor injury data for pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorcyclists just because the numbers of crashes were smaller, but those were weighted lower when we did that. I will also note with this analysis, this does not include freeways. Those are just kind of functionally, operationally different and are not typically used in this type of analysis. But really kind of the key takeaway from this is that almost 31% of our fatal and serious injury crashes in the region are happening under less than 2% of the regional network. So this is really kind of that starting red flag of if we want to make sure we're doing some work to really try to change our numbers in a positive direction, these are the areas that we need to at least start to make sure that we're addressing. We won't capture everything, but it's the ones to kind of use as that starting point. But then we're not just looking at where crashes have happened, right? But also trying to take a more proactive approach to look at where they may be more likely to happen. So we did a systemic analysis that we're calling crash risk index analysis. So this is a type of analysis where we're looking at road segments that share risk characteristics, so kind of using that crash data analysis to identify what those risk characteristics are, and then identify areas that share some of those similarities. So the key characteristics for us in the region, which is actually pretty similar as many places, are key to the number of lanes on a facility, volumes, and then posted speed limits. You'll note this one did not include pedestrians, although the crash risk index for bicyclists could be used for pedestrians kind of in combination with transit stops, which was a high risk factor that we found from that analysis. So just kind of show the 2 maps. We do have these separated out for bicyclists and then for motor vehicles crashes on that. And then from all of this analysis, overall. We use these two different types of analyses to identify kind of a top 25 list for the region for each type. So for the reactive analysis, where crashes have happened, and the proactive, where they're more likely to happen. So we have those lists by mode. Then for each county, we went back and created lists for each county. So up to 10 locations. Not every county had that many that came out in the analysis. I'll just kind of mention this is just kind of a snapshot in time. So part of the conversation we had with the technical advisory group was that there may be some agencies that already have projects identified in some of these locations, which is great. That's what we want to see, right? We want to see these problems addressed. But it could also kind of point to locations that maybe don't have something planned or don't have something planned in a shorter time frame and try to help inform that work as well for future work. And this could also be kind of one of those things that we're able to track over time where some of these improvements are being made and to see how that's reflecting in our overall numbers. So the remaining work, this was some of the work that was not yet completed last time we were here to talk about it. So this study is not getting to the level of saying, do these countermeasures at these specific locations. It doesn't get to that specific level of detail at a regional scale. So what we have is a toolkit for local partners to use that's available for download. And it's really kind of organized by the 5 main categories that we saw as kind of some of the main areas from doing the crash data analysis. So speed management was a big factor, pedestrians and bicyclists, roadway departures, intersections, and then the cross-cutting applications are more like treatments like lighting and surface treatments with that. And so this is primarily focused on infrastructure improvements, but there are other complementary strategies and initiatives that should also be considered as part of any safety program that are also covered in National Highway Traffic Safety Administration's countermeasures at work. And then the last piece of this, I'll just kind of talk through on the next, were the programmatic recommendations, which were really kind of focused on the council how to use this work. So first, we did start with a separate pedestrian plan, but moving forward, we are going to be looking to bring all the modes together in the analysis. That is a lot easier to do when you have everything together. And the recommendation was to look at updating this about every 5 years, especially with the high injury streets information. There's not really a lot of added value in updating that very frequently because you would just have 1 year out of 5 changing, so that's not likely to typically change your results significantly. The second one is safety in all policies. This is similar. You might have heard this in a context of health in all policies is a common approach to that issue. And it's the idea of looking at how you're addressing the issue and all of the work that you're doing, not just maybe the more obvious ones, like a safety category for solicitation. But we'll also be looking at how we can incorporate safety into the local comprehensive planning work that the council supports. And then also had a recommendation, just as we go through our work and future TPP updates, to be thinking about safety, even in contexts where that's not the primary focus, but there could be unintended consequences that could potentially impact safety. I will mention on the TPP part, so we were doing the TPP update at the same time as this project was going on. So the consultant team did also review our previous TPP, make some recommendations for that we just kind of folded into that process. So we're not calling that specifically out as part of this discrete project because that would be kind of confusing to talk about that separately from the TPP. But that was also a piece of this work. And then providing technical support, so all of the maps are online on the static maps right now. We have the data that we're cleaning up to make those available online. And then the remaining 2 strategies were really kind of more focused more on funding and how the council makes decisions and what we're doing with that. I'll say some of these are intended maybe for a little bit more midterm timeframe. So not everything would be something we would be talking about doing, for example, right now in the regional solicitation evaluation. So the first and the third bullet points, or both ones, that would really be more kind of after the solicitation round. So the safe system road design hierarchy is basically a 4-tier structure created by Federal Highway Administration, from kind of more effective strategies to lesser effective strategies within the safe system approach. This is something MnDOT has incorporated into its big book of ideas on roadway safety, and there's a recommendation to look at how that might be able to be further used in regional guidance and processes, as well as looking at benefit cost ratios. Those are two for kind of future work. Two that we are looking at building into this regional solicitation evaluation process really are just kind of evaluating our funding processes. That's work that's in progress, as you heard from Steve just before this. And one of the suggestions that came out of this plan, that is something that we do anticipate at least discussing in this process, we had a suggestion from one of our local partners as far as exploring the need or opportunities to potentially fund local safety planning work to support that throughout the region. And then really the other related one is just kind of using the products of these analyses in the decision-making processes. The last two slides are really just kind of examples from the recommendations. Something, might be kind of consolidated, so they may not necessarily always be split out, or depending what category you're talking about. If you're looking at addressing where crashes have happened, we could look at focusing on the top 25, whether it's on the high injury streets, the more proactive analysis, and then we do also want to acknowledge the local and state work that's been done at different levels, including county road safety plans, to include in that prioritization. And this is just another example of if we were using this analysis to kind of prioritize projects that were not primarily focused on safety, but maybe just had that as a consideration, that could be collapsed in different ways. So I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you might have. This is the webpage for the study where you can find the information, or QR code if it helps take you directly to it.
Okay, good. Yes, Member Jones.
Thank you. This is on. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. I really appreciate all of the information and data and work you put into it. And I just want to highlight something you mentioned at the end about exploring the need or opportunities for local safety planning work, because we have such a wide range of cities and different sizes in our region. And the city of St. Paul has our own safety action plan. And so it'd be great to, help support other cities. And then also, for the city of St. Paul, ways that when those action plans are completed, how we can incorporate that into the decision making, as you mentioned, because we're talking about, how we're going to distribute funding. And so that would be really great. So I was happy to hear that and hear you discuss that.
Thank you. I will mention St. Paul was specifically, they were on the technical advisory group as well.
Excuse me, Heidi. Yeah, in the back, if you want to pass your question up to the main member.
That'd be Peter.
To Peter. You can pass your question up to Peter, but this is a conversation not for you as an alternate because your member's here. All right, Member Martinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a couple things. First of all, thank you. Thank you for this. I very much appreciate this use of and development of this crash risk index, because it's not just based on the crash data, which are numerator data, if you think of it that way, right? So, and we don't often have good denominator data to know where people are walking or where people are biking in particular. And we do have the AADT data that give us a little bit better denominator data for cars. But the crash index, because it's using the characteristics of similar, similar setups, similar infrastructure setups, I think it gets us a little bit away from that. And I think that's a really good move. So thank you for that. And I look forward to seeing how that gets used going forward. And then I guess I just had an observation. The strategy summary here of safety.
Martinson, would you hit the pause button for just a second? Peter, remember DeGan?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Would
sir.
you take your alternate and go back? It's interruptive to what's going on. So if you can step aside for a second and find out what the question is.
Apologies, everyone.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thanks, Member Martinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the safety in all policies strategy feels like it's It's a good idea, but it feels like it's a little bit in tension with sort of where we're going with the regional solicitation, where we've got sort of a separate set of application categories for safety projects. And so I don't know how we're gonna resolve that tension, but that feels real to me. And I do think that we do need to have safety in all policies, and so safety has to be considered in the scoring of every category, regardless of if we have separate. So I just wanted to sort of note that I think that's right. And I think that we may be sliding a little bit away from that with where we're going with the regional solicitation. So just a point for future discussion.
All right. Yep. Thank you for that, Member Martinson. Member Jenkins.
Yep. Thank you also for the presentation. I just want to make a clarification point. On slide 14, under regular updates, it says use data-driven schedule for updates every 5 years. I completely understand that from a planning perspective, but will we be tracking and reporting on results every year so we can monitor trends? I mean, we can't change the planning every year, but so we can at least monitor trends and impact.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Member. Yes, so currently, as an MPO, we do currently have an annual requirement, so we will be coming back to you, kind of varies on the month, December, January, somewhere in there, to report on how we've done as an MPO on fatalities and serious injuries. So that is something that we are doing on that regular basis.
Okay.
And we
that
can look
won't
to
change.
expand that. That will not change. There is, under the previous administration, there was a proposal to maybe change the frequency of that as a requirement. That was not finalized under the previous administration, so the current requirements are still in place.
Thank you.
Good. Thanks for that. Commissioner Jepson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as a point of clarification, just something also to keep in mind, in the 1.8% of all the fatal and serious crashes happened in 30%. Am I getting that statistic right, Heidi? Okay. But if you go into the crash data analysis, the counties that experienced the highest number of fatal and serious injury crashes were Hennepin, Anoka, and Ramsey, while the counties with the highest fatal and serious injury rates were Scott, Carver, and Anoka. So I just, I'm always going to stand on my soapbox of equity and geographical equity. So let's always keep in mind per capita where those serious and fatal crashes are happening, so that we don't just score it based on a concentration of population, but where are those projects making the most impact based on the per capita and where the crashes are actually happening, again, just for geographic equity. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for that, Commissioner. Good thought. Yeah, now Member Dugan, you got your...
Again, my apologies. My alternate.
Could you pull your microphone closer, please?
Sorry. And sorry for the allergies, too. My dedicated alternate recited to me a situation in Egan where there was an intersection that was apparently a young man was killed, and it took several years, months, I'm not sure, to fix that. And so her question is there a way that we track dangerous intersections, particularly when local residents report it and say, I think this is, and is there a way that that's either tracked, or particularly if it looks like to the residents that it's being ignored?
All right, okay. So let's go back to
Thank you,
Heidi
Mr. Chair.
Schallberg and see where they collected their data from, if it was from situations like this, or how they went about their effort.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. So as far as kind of tracking citizen reports, that's not something that we would have access to at a regional level. I think we have about 188 municipalities and then the 9 counties. So that's not something that we would have data for consistently across the region to be able to track. That would be more of a local jurisdiction thing. So the data that is used in this is from the crash data that gets reported from individual police departments or highway patrol. Minnesota Department of Public Safety is kind of the owner of that data and works closely with MnDOT on that. So that was the source of the data analysis, along with some of the other infrastructure analysis.
Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think kind of piggybacking on some of the other comments, I know so many of us are undergoing our own safety evaluation, creating our own safety plans, and wanting to see if there's a plan of integrating the data that we're collecting into this regional effort to try to make sure that we're all, like, the data that we're collecting about our unsafe intersections or roadways can be integrated into the regional data that you collect. And then to Commissioner Jepson's point, I think finding a way to normalize data so that it is consistent across different kinds of roadways, and maybe breaking it out by like usage. I know we have, or primary usage of a roadway. I hear consistently in my areas that some residents won't use or cross a roadway because they don't see it as safe. It's really hard to collect that from a regional perspective, but the county is finding ways of collecting that information. I suspect that other entities are doing similar work, and if there's a way that we can incorporate that in, I think it would be really helpful to identify potential dangerous intersections. So,
Member Johnson? Sorry, I didn't realize you were here earlier.
That's okay. I mean, I was off to your left in the usual spot. I was being talked about.
I looked down here and they said, Member Johnson wants to talk, and I thought, was he here?
I am.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you. So again, this is great work. I think it's really interesting to think about the reactive, but then also how you can apply it to the proactive, echoing a lot of comments about that. I think that's been a challenge, I think, with if everything is infrastructure, it takes a long time to address it. It takes 10, 20, 30 years to finally go back and address something that's dangerous when it was built. So being able to tell in advance that it's going to be something dangerous, really important. A specific question about the regional high injury street. You had a map that was up there, and I live in the big red blob in the middle, which is kind of daunting. And so I'm curious if that is something that, as sort of the end of this project, will be something that will be posted anywhere. Is it something that we could just, get something we can really zoom in and see, sort of what these were, and including also the 25, reactive and proactive corridors as well. I think that'd be really interesting to be able to just sort of zoom in and see it on a very local level, what qualified, I mean, that sounds like a bad way to put it, but qualifies as one of these really dangerous high injury streets. So maybe just kind of what is the plan for how this is going to be disseminated, accessibility to whether it's TAB, the public, and then maybe a final question about, what's sort of the frequency of doing updates and going back and looking at this, because it'd be really amazing to see at TAB in 2 years, hey, we've addressed half of these, of the top 25, and now we're looking at a new batch of these, and that's sort of how you think about it. So maybe just kind of like that mix of things about how that all fits together.
Thank you, Member and Mr. Chair and members. So first to the question, yes, and I will also, that kind of brings up another point I want to mention too, because you live in the city of Minneapolis, which does have its own high injury street identification. So I do just kind of want to call out, this is not intended to supplant or match exactly other analyses that have been done. So the state has done this analysis statewide. Individual cities may have done this analysis. So if you live in a city that has this analysis and you look at the regional one, there may be differences. There are likely going to be some differences. We may be using different years of data, and then just kind of the different nature of the level of analysis, right? We may use different thresholds for it as well. So the static maps, I went back to this slide just because it does have the really long, awkward URL and the QR code. So everything is posted right now, with the exception of the interactive map, but we do have the static maps on there as well, and can share the data before it has all of its metadata and everything is very clean and published. I'm happy to share that as well before we have that. So that would be able to be kind of zoomed in. I think you had mentioned, so you were not talking about the frequency of updating the high injury streets necessarily, but just kind of the whole overall process, like the top 25, or was I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, I think Yes, I think to the first part, I would ask about that too, sort of what the frequency would be for sort of doing this analysis again. Now that the methodology is there, it seems like you could more quickly apply it, down the road. But yes, definitely about sort of, if you have these top 25, it'd be amazing to go down that list and be like, we've crossed these out. And so thinking about sort of, maybe it's an accountability side, but also, we need to bring funds to the table. And so it'd be really great to see a list of, this was addressed as this project as part of the regional solicitation by a county, or it was by a city, it got addressed in this way. And I think that'd be a great way to sort of track progress in a way that feels tangible to people here at TAB, probably to the council as well, and then to the public if it's something we could publish like that too.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. So first to the data updates, I think on the one slide, that's where we had talked about recommended interval for doing updates to the data would be about every 5 years. So it's not a type of analysis we would update on an annual basis, as an example. The other part that you're talking about, that is something that we can, are considering as far as what would make sense as far as the frequency of that. That is also information I would be interested in seeing. And that could be part of future reports, such as like when we're coming with the targets on that annual basis. Or maybe it is the 5-year basis. That's something we could have a discussion about. But definitely, I think, should be part of that review as far as to just capture the work, because all of your agencies are the ones actually doing that work, right? We don't own any roads. So, and there's a lot of safety planning work going on in the region. So I really want to try to lift that up and encourage it maybe among agencies that maybe haven't had the capacity or support, and really acknowledge those that are trying to help us move forward and reducing deaths and serious injuries.
Thank you.
Member Vaughn?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for all your great work on this. I know as somebody whose my extended family has been significantly affected by traffic violence and has experienced a lot of empty seats around the holiday tables, this work is just critically important, so I thank you for moving it forward through our systems. As a transit mode representative, part of where my mind went to is we've had a number of situations in Minneapolis where I live over the last few years where there were fatalities or serious injuries, or if somebody had been waiting at a bus shelter, it would have been a fatality because it was like destroyed by the impact of cars running off the roads, crashes, things like this. And I know whenever I stand at a bus shelter, I look around and I see most of the infrastructure that's there is actually specifically engineered to break away, to create, so basically forgiveness, so that if you do run off the road in your car, it can kind of absorb, and it's designed to kind of break away. But I look and I say, well, what's the protection for the people who are standing waiting for the bus? They are sitting waiting for the bus. And so I'm just curious, even if these are like relatively rare in the grand scale of the number of fatalities we have in Minnesota every year, are there countermeasures that can be included around like bollards and things that would provide more of a measure of protection for folks who are already vulnerable road users and are just out there trying to get around and can be exposed to pretty significant risk? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and member. I'm sorry first to hear that your family has been impacted, and that is a continuing, ongoing challenge for many. I think I did not plant his question, but really the question is kind of a lead into, we do have a follow-up project that was based on a recommendation in the pedestrian safety plan. When we did that plan, we were using transit stops as kind of a proxy for where people were more likely to be walking. But we had really disproportionate findings from that, of like almost 80% of our fatal and serious injury pedestrian crashes happened in close proximity to a transit stop, whereas those types of locations are, under a quarter of all intersections in the region. So we do have a follow-up study that we're working on scoping out on safer connections with transit to follow up. And I think what the point that you bring up is a really important one, and thank you for that suggestion. I think, whether or not the numbers are high, that is definitely something that I've seen in different places that I've lived over time. So I'm thinking of a specific one in my hometown in Kansas City where that happened to someone and he was killed waiting at a bus shelter. So That's certainly something that we can talk about in the scope of that project to look at what types of countermeasures might help protect people when they're just simply waiting, not just the act of crossing a street or moving along.
Commissioner Kowalski, we're going to let you have the last word. We're a little over time here, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A good presentation. Had you been here several months back and there's been detail added to this presentation?
Yes,
Such as the map?
Mr. Chairman, yes. So we came with the consultant team. I don't remember, I think we had like 3 or 4 people here at that time, and the project was still in process at that time. So the main additions were kind of finalizing the data analysis and the countermeasures and the programmatic recommendations.
So I think you're making progress in the right direction. I appreciate the map and the data explaining why it's more fatality or more dangerous. But the key is the circumstances or the importance of the data is how it's really formulated. And I apologize if I missed it, but I think it'd be really convenient, and I think some of the people's comments were regarding data, is it'd be nice that you lay out the ground rules of the data. Here's the example. Because I think the map would be good, as Commissioner Member Johnson pointed out, that if we took the higher priority roads and made progress, and we would see a reduction in fatalities. But I really trust our county engineers, city engineers, to be a key part of the data analysis. That's why it'd be nice to have a definition of the analysis of how these roads are rated, intersections roads, because to me, I would want to maybe extract some of the factors of fatality, drunk driving, on their phone, and that comes from police reports, and police reports are only as good as the police officer writing that report. So they can be very wide. That's where I'd rather have some engineers for consistency. So I'd like more enhancement of that rating, try to have more faith in the rating that when we assign a road improvement. But the other factor is it'd be good to capture this, and you said when you update it 5 years from now, that we don't commingle it with added road miles and intersections, because it'd be nice, are we making on the new appropriations that have nothing to do with this traffic accident data, when you combine that over the last 5 years, combined with the ones we've plucked off your list, are we making progress? That's important too. So to me, I really appreciate the direction you're going. I just think we really need to be careful of the data and that it's meaningful data.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, as a wrap up, I think, this is very valuable information, but to Chair Johnson's point, from active transportation, we can use this data, but you've got to give us more information on the high injury streets, more detail around that, and all that crash data. Because it might affect how that group does its work that Chair Johnson is leading in terms of adding in that safety component to the analysis of how those active transportation dollars get spent. Because certainly reducing injuries, serious injuries and fatalities be part of that. So anybody have anything for the good of the order? Member Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say the Beeline opens on June 14th. There's going to be a big celebration at Union Depot at 10 a.m. I think it would be awesome if the Transportation Advisory Board had a solid representation there because of the work that we do supporting public transit. Member Karwoski, I'm going to invite you specifically. It was a joy seeing you at the Gold Line opening. And I think the way that you talk about public transit and how you have used it with your family is really important. So if you are available, I would love to see you on the 14th at 10 a.m. at Union Depot.
I have seen invites on that, kind of indirectly, but if we could have one specific to the tab, that's kind of a calendar invite, that way.
Yeah.
I don't want.
All right.
Try to honor your request.
Did anybody else have anything? All right, we stand adjourned. Thanks, folks. Thanks for sticking around.
No, you don't have to open it for me. I'm just kidding. Did you see this box of chocolate,
Did you ever
Mr.
get
Chair?
the, yeah, I'll get the other one, the regional evaluation. I guess you didn't get the other one. No, don't worry. He's like, I'd stand to say goodbye. Take care.
A lot of good discussion.
I know. I'll take your name tag back. What are they going to do?
Yeah.
I got it.
All right, take care.
All right, Mayor. Bye-bye.
That's exactly what it was. It was taking the system.
When I wear my Lincoln attire,
$1
each, yeah.
I get a system.
We had the whole thing sitting here all meeting at one. I'd love to have one.
What is it?
No cost.
It's my daughter's band.
How much are they?
I don't have to 5 or something.
I'll give you this one back.
Something happens, make sure that money goes through their vehicle.